All right, so our presenter tonight is going to present on CERT. Her name is Robin Adair, call sign KE0MIX. Go ahead, Robin.
Thanks for having me. I know, I saw that. That's great. We didn't even plan it.
Radio cousins.
That's great.
So Robin, the camera's up there.
Okay, so yeah, it's what
I got it.
okay. I just wanted to be out of the way of the screen because I want everybody to be able to see the screen too. Does that work for you? Okay, great. Thanks very much for inviting me. I understand from Chuck, who's also a member of the CERT team, that that there was a request that we come and explain what it is we do. We always work together at the 4th of July, and somebody asked, what are the people in the green shirts doing and what is CERT? And, you know, besides the folks walking up and down the parade route. So thank you for the invite for coming in. CERT is a national program. It's been around since 1993. There are more than 2,700 CERT teams in the country, and U.S. territories and protectorates, and there's one in Chile, there's one in China, there's a couple others, but it's a FEMA program. It's a United States program. Since the inception of the program, more than 600,000 people have finished the training, which is a 20-hour program. The CERT basic training is a 20-hour program. Not all 600,000 people have joined those teams, but there are more than 2,700 teams. It's a community-based preparedness program, and it is designed on the idea that in a disaster, and it's all focused on disasters and community response to disaster, the idea is that you're going to be helping the people you're standing next to in a disaster, and that neighborhood-based, community-based programs that are local grassroots efforts and are part of the local fabric of the community for the disaster work better. And so that's kind of what CERT is, and it's different in the 2,700 different places. It's probably not run the same way in 2 different jurisdictions because every one of them is locally based with a national curriculum that everybody follows. It gives the first responders more resources for immediate post-disaster. So when we have a disaster, what do we mean by a disaster? Anybody? What's a disaster? Huh? Blizzard is a disaster, but why is it a disaster? What's the characteristics that make a disaster, as opposed to a bad day or an emergency?
Infrastructure down, resources availability.
Yeah.
Power.
Yeah, the magnitude of it. You're right. Infrastructure. When there are more people wounded than there are people to give first aid, that's a disaster. When there's more need than there is a resource to fulfill it, that's a disaster. And first responders can be easily overtaxed or pushed to capacity in a disaster, which means we need everybody in the whole community to jump in and help. And that's what CERT does, is it teaches people in the community how they can jump in and help and not get hurt and do it with good judgment after a disaster. It's sponsored locally. So in our county, it's sponsored by the Office of Emergency Management. In many counties, it's at the OEM. At some counties, it's sponsored by the fire department or it's sponsored by law enforcement agencies, but either law enforcement, fire, or OEM sponsors all the local CERT teams. CERT is not like a proprietary curriculum. I mean, you could just take your group and go study the CERT stuff and have a little CERT team, but it wouldn't be an official CERT program unless it was sponsored by a first responder agency. Here in El Paso County, we call it Pikes Peak CERT. And we have been doing the basic training for the community since 2002, which is the class where we just teach people, educate people. We call it catch and release training. We just bring them in, teach them, send them home. In 2015, we decided to establish a CERT team of volunteers. So after people take the training, going farther and putting together an organized team at the county level. Right now, we've got 67 volunteers in Pikes Peak CERT at the county level. What the team does, yeah.
So even though it's got the name Pikes Peak, I also heard you use the word county. Is it based on the county?
Not, it is here. Okay. It is here. The Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management is a combination of El Paso County and the city of Colorado Springs. So our boundaries are still the borders of El Paso County. So we cover the county here. In some places, a specific police department or a sheriff's department or a parish or a city or a town could have a CERT team. But in here, it's a county-wide team that covers the county.
If there was another team that was Colorado County, I mean, they're near Pikes Peak, but they're their own team, right? They're, because it's
It's a
county,
constant sore spot.
it's county.
The tip of Pikes Peak is in Colorado Springs. But yeah, Teller County's on Pikes Peak too. And they do have their own county CERT team that they're just getting started right now. They're starting the first training program, and Keller County has their own team they're under the Teller County Sheriff's Office. So it's a law enforcement agency that runs it up there.
Okay.
Here in the Pikes Peak region, when I'm saying that, I mean all of El Paso County, including the city of Colorado Springs. We do, basically these are our areas that we operate in. Personal preparedness is first thing, that everybody be personally prepared, understand personal preparedness, and take a vow to be personally prepared and make sure that we're ready to take care of our families and our loved ones and our neighborhoods first. And then we also do special event support, which is what you see us doing at the 4th of July parade. They're involved in emergency activations when we do have an emergency, not a declared emergency, but when the county activates in an emergency, certain volunteers are brought in to help. And they do lots of community education and outreach, which is probably the bulk of what they do, is that outreach to the community, trying to spread the gospel of preparedness to anyone who will listen. And I'm going to deep dive those areas in just a second. The first thing it starts with is the CERT basic training class. And that's a 20-hour training course that we offer to the general public. You don't have to join the team if you take the class, and we just ask that everybody who is on the team has taken the class at one point. Sometimes people join the team and then they take the class, but we want everybody to have the same basic training. And these are the topics that we cover in that basic training class. We go over the local risks and the local resources. We try to make it a locally based, specific to our region training. We go over personal preparedness and family preparedness. We teach disaster medical operations, which is different than basic first aid, because it's based on a disaster. It's based when there's a lot of wounded, like a mass casualty situation, or a widespread impact to the infrastructure in the community, what the medical operations would look like in that, and how CERT members can help with that. We talk about team organization. Are you familiar with the ICS, Incident Command System structure? We teach that to the CERT members so they understand how the first responders are getting organized and how they can get their neighborhood organized if they want to. We do fire safety, including fire extinguisher use and hazardous materials awareness, and a psychological first aid class is part of that 20-hour course. We also do counterterrorism awareness, because that's an important thing when we talk about disasters. Unfortunately, that's a whole category of disasters. And then we talk about light search and rescue, and we teach folks how to get somebody out of a collapsed building, or how to rescue medical patients from the debris of a hurricane or a tornado. We don't talk much about hurricanes, but we talk about tornadoes and straight force winds, the things that we have in Colorado. And that training is, I mentioned, open to the general public. Anybody can take it, and you don't have to join the team if you take it. We do a lot of people take the class who don't go on to join the team, but we still are doing that public education and outreach. And the volunteer members of the CERT team teach this class. They teach the whole 20-hour course. People who participate in the course, we survey them, and they've told us this, which is, I think, super cool. 69% of the people who have taken the course pass the knowledge on, either to their family members, their neighbors, or somebody else. It's really neat to see that they help their neighborhood with readiness, that 36% of them took additional preparedness training after the CERT class. It's having an impact. I think that taking the 20-hour course out to the community and having people participate in it does get people to do things, to take steps to be ready for a disaster. Now, the CERT team members in the personal, I gave you those categories of things that we do. In the personal preparedness category, of course, they take the 20-hour basic training. We have monthly supplemental trainings for the CERT team members. So every month, like you have a training in here, we have a CERT team training, and we cover preparedness or disaster response related topics. We have exercises and drills, and the CERT team members can participate in those regional exercises and drills with the first responders or with the Office of Emergency Management or whoever's participating in the drill. We just had a full-scale airport exercise, and we had CERT members out in the field at the site. Some of them were helping the first responders with staging of equipment and organizing the exercise. Some of them were actors who were pretending to be injured in the plane crash. And then we had other folks like Chuck, who came into the Emergency Coordination Center to help with the administration and management part of the disaster. So we do that regularly. We send CERT team members to conferences and we send them to FEMA training. A lot of people participate in the CERT team because they're trying. But our CERT team is, what would you say, Chuck? It's a mixed bag of ages and purposes. The people are in the.
There's a lot of old parts like me. Young people trying to get into emergency management, that's a career. You get a broad spectrum of people and experiences. Interesting perspectives.
Yeah. So a lot of people, 2 or 3 of our members are in college programs where they're getting a degree in emergency management or a degree in homeland security. And so they want to participate in the CERT team for resume building, and they also can take advantage of additional training that you have to be, affiliated with a first responder organization in order to take training. But as a member of CERT, we can send you to the advanced training and they can get out of college with all these certificates that other folks don't have because, you know that you have to have experience to get the job and you have to have the job to get experience. We fix that by letting you be a volunteer and get the experience. So that's what we do under personal preparedness. Now, when we have an emergency activation, the CERT team does a lot of different things. They can be called in to support the Emergency Coordination Center. I'll give you a brief idea of what emergency management does. Does anybody know what emergency management does? Everybody knows what the fire chief does, and everybody knows what the police chief does. Nobody knows what the emergency manager does. We do management and administrative work for everything that happens as a consequence of a disaster. So if we had a big grass fire, the fire department is the incident commander. The fire department is in charge of putting out that fire. But what would happen as a consequence of a big grass fire? Anybody? There are hundreds of things. Electrical outages. What else?
Damage, injuries.
Injuries.
Displaced livestock.
Displaced livestock. Evacuations. Hazardous materials things happen after fires. Everything that happens that spins off of that emergency, the fire chief's not handling all that. The fire chief says, evacuate this neighborhood. He's not setting up hotels or setting up a school gym with cots or finding a way to feed them. The fire chief says, I have 50 firefighters out here. They need lunch and they need porta potties. And he doesn't have porta potties at the fire station. So we're in charge of pizza and porta potties too. But also evacuation centers, animal shelters, all those things that have to be set up. And we also have to cross all the T's and dot all the I's on keeping track of it all. Because I don't know if you're aware, but if we have a large disaster, they call it a declared disaster. Have you heard we got a presidential declaration for this disaster? Does that mean anything to anybody? It's the amount of financial impact it's had on our community. And we reach a certain threshold, then the federal government will reimburse us for the expenses in handling that disaster, 75% of those expenses. But they won't, just like when you do your taxes, they won't reimburse you unless you have all the procurement procedures followed correctly and all the paperwork in place and everything, everything has to be documented. So we're doing that too. So Chuck, what does the CERT volunteers, when we call you for an emergency coordination center support, what kinds of things are the volunteers doing?
Well, the airport exercise, the first thing we did was check in the people that were coming to be actors or players in the ECC, get them pointed in the right direction for where they were going to be. Once we got them all checked in, all 3 of us worked in the information section for Robin, coordinating information, getting information on what's going on. One thing I learned in that one is that people at the airport weren't telling us a whole lot, which made it a little hard to get some of the answers. But yeah, a little bit of everything. Taking notes. I was a scribe for a couple of meetings, a couple of briefings. But just the thing that I like about it is, well, like I'm retired, so I can help during the day, during the week. A lot of people can't, so it's a chance to be able to get experience and help during the week when they need help.
Are you based at Mark Davlin?
Mm-hmm.
One thing Robin mentioned, the fire department needed porta potties. A few months ago, KD0 CFW, John was here talking about the SCU, Special Communications Unit.
Yeah.
There was a fire out east in the county, and they sent the SCU out, not for the radios, but as a porta potty for the firefighters. So yes, literally, provide porta potty support.
That's all.
That was a controversial decision.
You can have porta potty.
It was a very controversial decision.
It was.
The huge, not the little one.
Big one, the sheriff's office, yeah.
I mean, all they want to do is have internet capability in the porta potty.
Like I said, it's controversial. But anyway, now in order to work in the information section, the emergency coordination section is where all this is happening. It's the physical location. In order to work in there, Chuck has had additional training, and we give the CERT volunteers additional training if they want to fill those rules. Some of them come in and make lasagna for everyone, you know, and that doesn't take so much training as it does just willingness to stay at the ECC. The bomb cyclone, they were there 24/7. We all slept at the office because nobody was going anywhere in that blizzard. So CERT volunteers came in to do the kind of non-trained support stuff as well. We do have field assignments when there is an activation. COVID, we kept CERT very busy during COVID, very busy. Everybody else was at home looking for something to do. CERT volunteers all got vaccinations immediately as soon as they were available, and then we brought them in to start working on traffic control at the testing centers, everything that had to do with the vaccination centers except getting the shots. I mean, all the coordination of all those people, running the call center. Call center is a great example of every time you hear on the news, if you want information or if you have a problem, it's non-emergency, call this number. CERT volunteers are answering the phone when you call. So they handle the call center for Club Q shooting, for blizzards, for fires, for windstorms, and for COVID, we had 25 people on, and of course, COVID, we moved the call center to remote. So we got everybody on their computer at home answering calls, but, and there were a lot of calls for COVID. So CERT's doing that kind of thing too. Field assignments can be just about anything. We don't put CERT in a first responder role. I mean, we're not going to say, you know, go grab a fire hose or go rescue people from that collapsed building, because first responders are trained for that. But if there's field assignments that CERT can do, they may get asked to do it. Build shelving, that's what we did last week.
Yeah.
Chuck can tell you what that was all about. We built a lot of shelving last week. Another thing we do, and that picture was right side up when I saved it this afternoon. But anyway, let's CERT volunteers at the 4th of July parade. We do a lot of events supporting communities, not just in Monument, but special events in communities throughout the county. And that can be setting up first aid stations, or patrolling the parade route for safety, or just carrying additional public service radios so that there's just more communication happening. We can call the first responders. We do family reunification.
A fair amount of that.
You know, because we have a lot of people that get separated at the parade, and we support the 4th of July parade here in Monument, the events down in Fountain, Black Forest Festival. You know, when there's a big festival, we don't go to Territory Days. We don't go anywhere near Territory Days in case that comes up, because that's a madhouse. But if they asked us to, we would. So that's how we support public events. And then we do lots and lots of outreach. As I mentioned, the CERT volunteers teach that 20-hour class. They also do classes and presentations throughout the community all the time. Next month, we're going to a senior citizens apartment complex. The CERT volunteers are going to do a presentation on how to be personally prepared and how to build, you know, what older Americans need to do to be ready for a disaster and ready for an evacuation. This is a picture of one of our CERT volunteers teaching a class of middle schoolers about fire safety and how fire extinguishers work for their chemistry class. We taught 300 middle school students all about how fire extinguishers work, and then we took them out and let them practice using the fire extinguishers, which was really a lot of fun. But it was 3 solid days of 8th graders. And fortunately, we have a lot of CERT volunteers that like to instruct and are very good at it, so they can do stuff like that. We talked to HOA groups and church groups and Cub Scout troops and whoever, like I said, whoever will listen to us, we'll talk your ear off. We hold community workshops. Has anybody gone to the wildfire mitigation workshop that they have at Palmer Ridge High School every year? That's a CERT is behind that. There's also a high school CERT team at Palmer Ridge High School that's just students, and they put on a wildfire mitigation workshop every April, and they're going to be doing that again this year. We attend neighborhood festivals. We attend block parties And we attend big festivals and little festivals, not just in an event support role, but also with our information booth to talk to people about preparedness and answer their questions and get them to sign up for peak alerts. Do I have to ask if anybody has not signed up for peak alerts in this room? You're all signed up, right? Sign up for peak alerts. We do that a lot at every neighborhood that'll have us. And then there is a cadre of CERT volunteers that are particularly passionate about the wildfire risk mitigation, and they will do an assessment of your property to let you know what you need to do to mitigate your fire risk. They'll talk to your neighborhood about how to put together a wildfire protection plan for your neighborhood, how to get organized. They'll help you organize a neighborhood chipping and shredding day if you want to do mitigation as a neighborhood. They do a lot of outreach for wildfire. This year, we had 25 days of special events that we staffed. We delivered the 20-hour course 7 times, and we did 13 community presentations like the middle school and other classes that weren't the 20-hour class. And we'll also do a 1-hour class on any topic you want to pick. If you just want to talk about evacuation, or you just want to talk about how to pack a go kit, not a radio go kit, but a food and supplies go kit. We'll come out and do short classes on that kind of thing too.
Like somebody could chat with the peak alerts.
Yep. Yes. El Paso Teller911.org, or just go to peakalerts.org. If you're not signed up, can you raise your hand if you're not signed up? Would you let me know? Have you signed up for Peak? Would you tell me if you didn't? Okay, so I'll just assume none of you have. Peakalerts.org is the most important thing that you can remember about any preparedness class in this region. Peakalerts.org is where you sign up to receive reverse notifications from the 911 system. This is how the sheriff's office is going to tell you that your neighborhood's been evacuated, or there's an active shooter in your neighborhood, or there's flooding and you need to go to higher ground. That's how they're going to tell you. And it's based on the addresses that you put in. And in Colorado, we're not allowed to ping your cell phone unless you sign up for the service. So you have to opt in. You can pick 5 different locations and 8 different phone numbers to be notified on, which is cool because you can find out if there's an evacuation in your neighborhood. You can also find out if there's an evacuation where your kids go to school, or if there's an active shooter where your grandmother lives. You can put a lot of addresses in there to receive notifications, but you have to sign up for it. And less than 30% of the people in El Paso County have signed up for it. And that's not cool. It's not enough. And every time there's an evacuation, big evacuations for wildfires and things you hear across the country, people say, well, I didn't get the notice. Did you sign up for the notice? Sign up for the notice. Really, it's really important. So go to peakalerts.org and sign up. Tell everybody you know that they need to do that. I know this wasn't a preparedness talk, but I gave you one anyway. That's really important. And CERT does a lot of talking to people about peak alerts and why they should sign up and how they can sign up so that they get that notification. It's not. Are you thinking in your mind, oh, I get Amber alerts? That's the same thing. It's not the same thing. You guys should understand that the federal wireless emergency alert system hits a cell phone tower, and we pick a cell phone tower, and everything in a certain radius of that cell phone tower gets notified. It's based on where you're standing. So if the shooting is at the mall and you're at the mall, it'll hit your cell phone. But peak alerts, if you live in the Black Forest and you go on vacation in Florida, we're going to call you if your home's evacuated in Florida. And it has nothing to do with what cell tower you're standing near. So it's a completely different system. Chuck, what can you tell folks about what for the good of this order, what do they need to know about CERT? Because Chuck's been a steadfast member of the team for a long time.
I looked at it because I was not quite ready to retire when I took the CERT class, but I was looking at ways to get back to the community. That's something that's important to me. Of course, now I volunteer, 4 days a week out of the 5 in a week, and so I looked at it as an opportunity to get back to the community, and so I took the class with Robin and the group that I was in November of 2019, and it's just a way to contribute. It has helped me bludgeon my oldest son to get signed up for peak alerts. He still hasn't done it, so I'm going to work on it more. But it's good information. There's a lot of stuff in the course that as you saw the topics that it covers, there's a lot there. Because of my 40 some years in the Department of Defense in various capacities. Counterterrorism is something that I pay a lot of attention to. So that lesson was particularly relevant for me. But it's a chance to give back, whether it's an hour a year or much more than that. It's a chance to get back to the community if you can, and to help people around you. And I've been working on all 3 of my kids that live here and making sure that they are signed up and that they're getting information. It's just, for me, it was the right thing to do.
About 25 of our 67 members, maybe about 25 of them are ham radio operators. I've already asked Derek or anybody else here if they'd like to come talk to CERT about ham radio clubs, because they have their ham licenses. A lot of the CERT members got their ham licenses as a preparedness step, because we talk about the importance of communications in a disaster and that you need an alternative to your cell phone. And a lot of people have gone out and got their basic technician license and passed the test, and then they either haven't bought a radio or they never keyed it. Right? So the next step they need to take is practicing and learning how to do it. So I think we've got some, mutual benefit here. If you guys want to come, or if Derek wants to come talk to the CERT team about what they can get out of a radio club and participating in a net and keying their radio once a week and getting over the, the jitters about doing that would be really good for them. But
Yeah,
they do.
controls. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have takers. You would. It's nice to have fresh membership because you can get them to do. They can give them all the offices in the club, and have them run the net. So ham radios is something we talk about at every CERT class, and we extol the virtues of getting a ham radio license. We just don't take it the next step and get people on the air. And I think we really have been remiss in that and need to work on that more. Well, we tell people to just go join the club, and then they don't. So we need to fill that gap.
But that's really more about individual preparedness, isn't it? It doesn't have a real factor in the Office of Emergency Response.
Well, our SCU group, the SCU organization is a group of volunteers like the CERT team under our office, and they're all radio operators who handle they handle radios in support of emergency services versus in support of their neighborhoods. What we want to encourage the CERT members to do is be able to support their neighbors and their friends and the people they're standing next to when the bomb goes off with their ham radios. And you guys have had the presentation from the Special Communications Unit, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do have a functional ham radio group of volunteers at OEM that are supporting professional
I'm a member,
communications.
just a member.
Yeah.
Phoebe Swope, who had here, Armstead Phelan, is another member of SCU. The county buys us radios, and we've got radios, several radios that have been recent purchases, but a couple of TS 2000s and some others. We have the SCV, the vehicle. Last weekend, October 7th, they were up at UPass, doing evacuation exercise and demonstrating some capabilities.
Lots of wind lane.
Yeah, lots of wind
Well,
lane.
you have a whole room at Mark Dabbling that is equipped with ham radios as well as first responder radios, as I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's amateur stuff and then there's some municipal radios as well. We can talk to pretty much
There
anybody.
used to be a cache of APX radios in the corner in there to hand out to different people.
They're still, that's.
Yeah, we still have them.
One of the things I did for the exercise that we had was get Robin and APX to listen to the traffic that was happening out at the airport.
Yeah.
But they're supporting the emergency response from this volunteer group. So yes, we have ham radio operators that support the first responders and are a backup to all backups would go to ham communications. In the bomb cyclone, when we had shelters all over the place, people were setting up shelters in the blizzard. And some of them were official Red Cross shelters. Some of them were just churches were throwing open their doors and saying, come on inside. So I believe it was Aries sent somebody to each one of those locations with a ham radio, and they were communicating back to the Office of Emergency Management through our SCU by ham, because we couldn't get in touch with the shelters otherwise. So the ham radio operators were operating that way. So yeah, we do have some operational radio involvement, yeah. But the biggest part of what CERT is asking the public to go out and get their licenses. We're big advocates of go get your license and learn how to use your radio, because we would like the more people in the more neighborhoods who have a backup to communications, then the more successful we're going to be getting through a disaster. You're
And
gonna
that
be-
huge part is knowing how to use the radio, like you were saying earlier, it's more than just getting your license. It's going out there and being that control, knowing how to, hear people on the radio, know what they're saying. Playing POTA, I mean, that was the best thing I ever did to become a better operator. So using those radios, so when we do have those emergency situations, that you are a functional asset. You're not a person who's like, oh my gosh, what are all these freaking buttons? Right? They're just gonna become a liability at that point, so.
Yeah, and OEM greatly supports the community use of ham radios, and that's why we let you have the building once a month so that you can run the test down there too. That nobody else is allowed to use our building except you guys.
In a similar fashion, when a disaster happens and Peak Alert lets the community know to evacuate or what they need to do, is there a similar alert to the CERT people or the team that you have that says something just happened, we need your help?
Mhm. Yes, there is.
You get on the list.
All right.
Yeah, once you're a member of the team, we've got everybody's cell phone numbers and everybody's email addresses in a notification system. And we notify groups as they're needed to either respond to the emergency coordination center or whatever it is we need them to do, or call me back or tell me, are you available tomorrow? There's a notification system for everybody involved. Yeah.
It's like with the Aries, you don't self-deploy. Same thing with these.
That's correct.
With the certain SCU.
Right.
If you're on the list and you're an asset, they know you're out there. When they need you, they give you the jingle.
That notification system does rely on either cell phones or the internet. Unfortunately, we don't have a backup for that, but I suppose I could go to SCU and say, start calling people. Yeah, start calling people. Yeah.
Also, we listen to, if there's something going on and cell goes down, we know to listen to like our SCU repeater, the 760. We're gonna have that up, and as a seasoned operator, we know how to use our equipment to listen for that.
Is the antenna fixed?
Whose antenna?
The 7.6 antenna was in very poor shape for a long time, and
760 works fine. So does the 970 as best as it can with the new location.
but Vogie did not want anybody to go up to the mountain and fix that antenna for the longest time.
I've been up to the mountain and fixed it.
Yeah, good,
That's an old topic.
because that thing, when we did Skyfall several years ago,
Mhm.
you couldn't even hit 7.6 from the airport.
Now, and they moved the 970, everybody knows, because of the Summit House, and that's just the way it is. We are very thankful that the PPR OEM took over that gear, otherwise it would have been gone. And it wouldn't even have been like, oh, there's a shadow area. We wouldn't even have something to talk about. So yes, both are functional.
Good.
So you see the folks in the green shirts. We're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So did you guys pick up for Pikes Peak Rehab when it kind of shut down for support of the first responders?
No, the Pikes Peak Rehab was, I don't know if it's officially, I don't know if the word is replaced, but has morphed into the Emergency Incident Support Team.
Okay.
And that's a group of volunteers that feeds the first responders, and we use them on every activation.
Yeah, I was active with that after I retired.
Yeah, so EIS is operating in the same way that rehab used to, and many of the people that were on rehab are on EIS, and there's a new group of volunteers as well. But yeah, they're still very active, and they've had a couple food trucks and an ambulance donated, so they've got a lot more resources than they used to have too.
Cool.
Thanks for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you.